I'm an architect, and we just immediately have airs about ourselves. We feel that we are superior, and we look down upon an MEP engineer just doing a PMM pipe. Singular purpose of the Council of Architecture and the architect that was to create a body that can register art. I know that it's difficult for young architects to really understand. Fundamentally, all that it does is to register.
See a lot of public infrastructure projects being handled by foreign firms.
We've had collaborated and worked with some amount of foreign companies. A lot of the design value that they have brought, the design, actually, they have seen project cycles of projects across the world from Oman, Singapore, to India itself. As architects, we kind of suck at finance. I don't think we kind of crack that actual business of it.
Today, I am honored to host Mr. Dwaipayan Chakravarty. Dwaipayan is a seasoned architect and urban designer with an extensive experience of around 20 years. He is a junior partner at VK Architecture. He handles large-scale projects, which includes residential, commercial, educational, and master planning townships, Nanded being one of them. Beyond practice, he has actively contributed to architectural education in India, having been a part of NIASA and BKPS College of Architecture. He's also engaged in writing with notable blog addressing pertinent issues in the field. Today, we will be talking to him about his views on the changing landscape of architecture and education in this fraternity. Hello, how are you doing?
Excellent, excellent. Thank you for taking this time out to speak with me. Quite honored.
I would like to start a little bit about your journey with Council of Architects.
No, I don't think too many people kind of in our architecture fraternity really grows up and says that, I want to work with the Council of
Right.
Architects. I was in School of Planning and Architecture in New Delhi at that time. I was doing urban design. My wife, now girlfriend, then we were introduced to Mr. Vijay Soni, who was then the president of Council of Architects. And we were just, I remember we were having a chat over dinner, and Mr. Soni said that, we architecture, Council of Architecture needs to change and needs to evolve. We've been there at the regulatory process at various aspects. We really need to put ourselves deeper and really understand, help train teachers, academicians, and be at the, be at that supportive role at the architectural education process.
Hmm.
He being a very strong and dynamic educator himself when he was at Indian VP College of Art in Nashik. So he understood that aspect, and he said that, we're going to be starting something called the National Institute of Advanced Studies in Architecture, which is going to be like an educational wing or an academic unit of the Council of Architecture. So would you like to join? At the point of time, like, we're young, idealistic, daring to go to various aspects. And I think the idea of being part of academics, but not at the front end of academics, I've always kind of been afraid of the fact that running out faculty, which is just, they just kind of literally graduated. They got post-graduation immediately. They haven't really seen the architectural world. They have seen faculty. So it's this kind of regurgitation process that never really kind of appealed to me so much, though teaching did appeal. But I felt that teaching had its time. It was like a startup company for the Council of Architecture. And it would be the back-ending aspect of academics, understanding what the education policy of the Council of Architecture would be, helping all the architectural colleges come together at that time. I think it was, so this 2005.
Hmm.
And I think there were only about 300 colleges of architecture at that time. I assume we have something like 800 colleges we think now.
With
But
Council of
I think
Architecture, we have almost around 410 colleges registered.
right now, so that's
Yeah.
410. Then my memory is mistaken. We had way lower. We had probably about 170 colleges.
Yeah, yeah.
170 colleges at that time. And I think literally the day after my thesis at SPA, we have that fancy SPA UD party, got launched a bid. And next day was my day of joining at NIASA. So I had a wonderful experience at NIASA. There was nothing really set up. We had worked different development studies and activities with PDSA, which was started by Anita Gokle and Christopher Benninger. AEC
Okay.
campus, wonderful campus in Pune. And they were partners in this, and we we housed us as well. And so NIASA, even though it sounded big, National Institute of Advanced Studies in Architecture, it was actually me for the first couple of months. It was like, startup, so, I learned how to make a website. So, the NIASA website, how to make a website, how to get a telephone connection, how to write letters, contacting all these colleges. A couple of months later, Mr. Panvinde also joined us. Uh, he was the principal of BKPS College, and from the state government, he had taken a lien and joined us there. So for 2.5 years, we had a wonderful time. One of those important things was establishing the National Aptitude Test in architecture, and also the Thesis Awards program. It was great, and I think it's still continuing now. So a lot of interesting stuff at NIASA. I think after about 2.5 years, the registrar at that time, Mr. Vinod Kumar, and people at Council of Architecture were quite happy with whatever role that we're doing. And they offered me a central government job, everything that comes with and medical insurance, etc. I think I was just about 30 or something, and that scared the heck out of me. That, I can't be looking at taking up a central government job at and I think they offered that with a little bit of a pay increment and everything. But, I don't want to be caught in babu culture of things, even though, lots of interesting things were being discussed. And that's the time then I wanted to get back to my urban design and urban planning ideas. And I joined a large company in Pune, worked on a couple of integrated towns. And later on, made a move after a couple of years. So since 2013, I've been working with another wonderful company called VK Group, now currently junior partner at VK Architects.
Fascinating journey. Not everyone is much aware of Council of Architecture's role. And you have also mentioned in one of your articles that architects only touch upon COA when they have to get registered. And after that, they just forget everything about Council of Architecture. So I would like to follow up on similar grounds. So the UK has the RIVA, the US has the IIA working for client education and welfare of architects. There's no Indian counterpart as such. So what should we expect from COA and IIA respectively?
So we've had similar discussions within the profession, within academia as well for countless years. The Architect Act was constituted in 1972, and that gave rise to the Council of Architects.
Hmm.
Singular purpose of the Council of Architects and the Architect Act, or let's say to the architect, was to create a body that can register art. That's pretty much fundamentally it.
Yeah.
The provision of the Council of Architecture is unfortunately married to the legacy and to the pitfall of the Act itself.
Hmm.
Because the Architects Act is what, 1972. So where are we now? We're past 50 years that the Act
Yeah.
has in place. And just imagine that we are kind of blessed that we had various stalwarts at that time who really kind of established that Act. But it's unfortunately that nothing has kind of really moved beyond that, even though the profession has moved
Hmm.
by leaps and bounds since that time. So whatever Council of Architecture is right now and its limitation as to what it can do in bringing the fraternity together and really kind of having debates, discussion, and creating a kind of an environment for architects to flourish. I know
Hmm.
that one various presidents talking about it, but I do see a limitation in the act that empowers the Council of Architecture. Council of Architecture
Okay.
is being a government body currently it is under the MHRD, so under the Ministry of Human Resources and Development. There have
Hmm.
been discussions that it should be under the Ministry of Urban Development. But fundamentally, all that it does is if someone is an architect, just like, and even though I lamented the fact that all that we do with the Council of Architecture is to register, but
Hmm.
fact remains that the Act empowers only that. There's very little that we can actually do.
Hmm.
RIBA and even let's say the American Institute of Architects and all these kind of things, they have been empowered by a much larger statutory framework to things.
Okay. Okay.
I know that it's difficult for young architects, including young architects such as yourself and a lot of the people who might be listening to this to really understand. But legislation has a lot of control over multiple things that we do. And it's something that we don't really probably get into. But I actually take this opportunity to encourage every architect
Mhm.
once in their life, actually read the Architect Act. You do read it. It's not that big a document. Where when you kind of read it,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
understand it. You probably understand 70% of it, not understand it. But you will understand that the Council of Architecture, no matter how much we want to kind of blame them for things and, that it's not doing enough to really kind of bring the people up,
Mm.
you'll understand the limitations for Indian Institute of Architects, a completely different ballgame. It's not bound by
Mm.
statutory procedures beyond just basically being an institute under the Charitable Act, having that. You're
Mm.
free to make a much larger memorandum of association that is necessary for any such institute to work on. The problem there is that it is fundamentally an institute. As an institute, talk about things, they can make publications, they can help bring the fraternity to the various chairpersons of IIA or regional chapters. They have worked with vendors and companies. Have you ever been to an IIA event?
No, sir.
Fundamentally, and it ends up being one of those kind of celebratory nights where a lot of art come together. There's a couple of vendors and people from the AEC industry from sponsoring that event.
Mm.
They all come together, talk about the same old things, and end up with a glass of whiskey in their hand. And I think that's unfortunately where a lot of kind of IIA has moved on to. I don't want to generalize that because I know that the various chapters and regions which are actually doing exceptional work as well in promoting a larger kind of a thing. But I think what I'm trying to say is that Council of Architecture, by purpose and intent, the sole purpose is just to register architect or do
Mm.
register.
Right.
By,
Right.
by purpose of its memorandum of association to just kind of create a platform for getting the fraternity together. I remember that in 2007, the tremendous push to have an amendment to the Architect Act.
Mm.
It had gone up to the Rajya Sabha. There were various aspects of the Architects Act that we really wanted to push. We were trying to get the fraternity together, getting opinions on how this Council of Architecture, the Architect Act needs to change. I remember various senior professionals at that time. I was young, much like you. They had talked about the idea that we need to probably have a Institute of Chartered Architects.
Mm.
When you have Institute of Chartered Architect, that means much. It would probably be able to kind of combine these aspirations of these two entities together and help do the statutory aspects of ensuring that yes, only architects are working, and safeguarding their interests by Council of Architecture does, but also to have that kind of institutional framework by which we can inculcate larger, more value systems, we can conduct better training, and have something that probably closer to what Riba is able to.
Mm.
But this means a complete upheaval of the act.
Yeah. Right.
And I think a lot of the frustration that we get to see in this younger generation, rightfully so. I mean, as a slightly senior, I don't really want to put myself in that complete senior district, but yes, I am probably a few generations just ahead of you. But no matter if someone is 70 or someone is 50, there are various levels of frustrations that we do feel in the
Mm.
and I can see right from all those aspects that has happened from internship or
Mm.
to, really finding a job and getting valued as an artist within the younger generation. Rage is understandable. And I think it's justified. That frustration is understandable. But I think we need more younger people to kind of really come forward and talk about those aspects. I mean, have you actually read the Architects Act or the Council of Architects handbook and really understood what goes on with you understand, then if you're part of this, I mean, let's say, have you chosen to become a part of IIA and then probably become a part of the Executive Council of Architecture? I
Mm.
mean, those opportunities exist. No one says that you, for you to be a member of Council of Architects, you have to be like 50 and above
Yeah.
and be young. You have to be within the system to kind of probably make a change within the system.
Mm.
And I know in my own way, I had tried that when I was part of, yeah. And then my own personal aspirations of where I want to be in life took over and took those changes. But I think it was a wonderful opportunity being in cartography architecture to understand the people, to understand the systems that they're working with.
Mm.
And yeah, I think the younger generation has to move beyond that rant and kind of really be part of that change. You have to influence, you have to process them out. And then, you
Mm.
know what? We demand to change the Architect Act. It is 2024. how can we still be working on an act with those limited intentions? Right.
That's right. That's right. And I completely agree with you at this point that when it was instituted, the circumstances were very different from where we are right now. So that is understandable. But I would like to follow up on this question. If neither COA nor IIA are taking responsibility, then or either they don't have that kind of scope of work
And
that you what hope do we have then?
hope is hope. When you use the word hope, it does not have to be parametric. It's very important for the younger generation to have hope. When you
Hmm.
lose hope that nothing's going to change, then you just become part of that same redundant system that, so hone nahi wala hai. And that is a bit of a problem with the younger generation because I think a lot of the younger people are very emotive, they're very expressive. But I think that you need to have hope. Everyone needs to have hope. That sense of positivity that things can change. Thing is,
Hmm.
once you have that hope, once you have that positivity, or once you have that anger, what are you going to do about it? You need to. There needs to be. I mean, with 400 colleges churning out on an average about 80 students, what's happening in every private college at least.
Hmm.
Looking about 30,000 architects graduating every year. And I know that question is going to come that, with so many architects, what do we really do with them? I don't really see, or I'm not hearing about anyone who is really getting into the system to make that thing. You have to have hope, but you have to get into the system. Some of
Hmm.
us needs to get into politics. How many architects do we know that have really gotten into politics and are trying to make changes at the urban level? We need to get people who are getting into administrative services make those changes. We need to get people who are getting into the Council of Architecture and affecting those changes. We need people who understand those things and see how we can. So yeah, the other side is not going to happen.
Hmm. So how do you suggest that people get into Council of Architects? What is the process?
So the Council of Architecture, just like they do hold elections, there is an executive council for the Council of Architecture, which is meant to identify a large spread of society.
Hmm.
So by that spread, we have, let's say, the chief architect from all the states who then will talk about the government projects. And we also have designees from academia as well, who are supposed to be part of that process. And from the general profession, at least what the Act currently says is that there can be people from the Indian Institute of Architects who can be part of the Executive Council. Elections were held just a couple of months back, and that person becomes. When you're part of the Executive Council, you're part of the discussions by which these changes can be.
Hmm.
Now, let's say, Tommy, if you actually wanted to be part of the Council of Architects from the inside and do it, one is that, let's say, if they have some sort of an endeavor and they're taking people on contract, just like I became part as a research associate.
Hmm.
That's one way of doing it. I was part at NIA, so I couldn't really hold influence on a larger thing. That was not what I wanted to be.
Hmm.
But one of you decides that as you grow up and you become chief architect of a particular state, then ex officio, through that designation, you also become part of that
Hmm.
council. Can be part of the Indian Institute of Architects. Elections are held for nomination to the Council of Architects.
Hmm.
And I believe someone from Nashik or someone from Maharashtra has been chosen. So there are people who get in from the profession who actually represent the profession.
There are only
There's a
five people.
country way.
I mean, from IIA, only five people are selected in the council,
Yeah.
right?
So
Yeah.
I remember when we were proposing the changes in Act, the Architect Act, there were various suggestions that why only Indian so architect? Why not ISOLA? Why not IUDI? Why not, why can't we have other
Hmm.
professional bodies also coming in? And why can't it be a percentage of the total architects and not designated as just 5 people?
Hmm.
So let's say if we have maybe 2 lakh practicing architects right now, why can't it represent that, maybe 1% of that total this thing?
Hmm.
It needs to be a statistical number. But then that's a policy change. That's a legal change that needs to be.
Right.
So the process, and that process will require patience. So in India, it requires persistence as well. But right now, if the intent is not there, then whether it's process or persistence, we won't be having people stepping up.
Hmm. Right. Okay. So Let's move ahead with this and let's step into the industry now. I would like to know from you what has changed in your experience. How have the business setup principles changed over the period of 20 years? Can similar principles be applied by new firms today?
I think it's a like many things in life, it's a matter of both yes and no. I
Okay.
think what we were doing 20, 25 years back, we can still, in certain cases, continue with some of those principles as entrepreneurship, working on design, building up a small firm, keeping those kind of practices and those ethics intact. I think everything has its place. What the world offer right now is that not straitjacketed into a singular type of business strategy and thing. So I think
Hmm.
20 years back, whatever some people were kind of practicing, they also exist, and some of them thankfully are still doing well. But I think what has happened is that new decisions have come up in the way that business entrepreneurship and business
Hmm.
companies are also being in the business of architecture working. Yeah, I stay in, of course, in a tier one city or a kind of a major city that happens. So these things have seen rapid changes in urbanization and hence the expectations of the architect role in the urbanization.
Hmm.
So we've seen the emergence of kind of multidisciplinary is much more. So I think those kind of the idea that me and my friend from college, we're going to start a firm, we're going to do stuff together. I
Hmm.
think that is not surviving so well or successfully in the larger city.
Right.
We're just organizing very curated menu of services. We're just doing bungalows and interiors and the occasional landscape. Me and
Hmm.
my friend, I have two people who are like uptime there. They survive. They not that they do not exist, they do exist. But I think
Hmm.
kind of dig their own kind of limitations of where they can possibly grow. A lot of the more aspirational entrepreneurs, they're kind of adding larger larger, more bouquet of services, let's say, that they're kind of doing, and ultimately building up a brand, building up various kind of things to make sure that their clients are coming in. When they're coming in, these architects are able to offer them holistic
Hmm.
set of services. So they become that, one-stop shop for things. So that is where they are in a way kind of raising the value what an architect does,
Yeah. Yeah.
because the architect then more they become like a technical partner to their end
Right. Right.
rather than the architect who just does a wonderful design
Hmm.
product, which is then they published in a magazine. But like I said, both exist, and I think both are necessary. We get those boutique firms which are doing extremely well. Then we're
Hmm.
getting the mid-size. I think that after the really kind of exceptional boutique firms, when we really had that kind of middle ground of people who
Hmm.
just had 5, 10 people and they were trying to survive. I think they're the people who are more in the current age.
Hmm.
People
Right.
who they've gone up to the 30, 50 people and they're doing a larger set of services. I think they've been able to evolve.
Evolve better. Yes. Yes. Okay. I would like to know your opinion on this thing now. Is architects only design approach? Architects do not prefer turnkey projects, right? Do you think this is a new jargon or did it exist long before the Architects Act of 1972 was set up?
So, I mean, historically speaking, I think architects have always been doing kind of a turnkey product. So when we talk about the Renaissance and all those kind of things, at that time, architects were people who were, they were engineers, they were architects, they were artisans, they were craftsmen, they were all kind of rolled into one. They would be working with the craft, the architecture itself, and ensuring that the building, the plumbing system would be coming up. I think that things became more complicated when we have those typologies, hospitality, healthcare, and all those kind of things. Then, with the emergence that we required, the architect, the engineer,
Hmm.
consultant,
Hmm.
contractor, and all these things really kind of came into being, right? I think so. It's kind of always existed. Turnkey is a word which is kind of a bit hackneyed right now. A lot of people use it. Some people use it for comprehensive set of services.
Hmm.
So maybe I do architecture and landscape and interiors, and I have my friend who's doing MEP, and I put it into this thing, and I say that I'm giving it turnkey.
But that's only
Well,
consultancy.
but that
Turnkey,
sounds like consulting.
yes.
Turnkey actually means, but I know what turnkey means, but I'm saying that it's
Hmm.
being used in different ways.
Hmm.
Turnkey actually means that people, as an architect, would take that up and they would take the onus of the responsibility of the construction.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, so yes, a lot of people don't do that. It requires a lot of corp. right? So if I have to take up contracting, even if it's a singular bungalow, I know that it's going to take up to about 60, 70 lakhs.
Hmm.
Nothing else, and the interiors
Yeah.
itself might cost something more. So let's say I have to spend about, or I need a cash flow availability of up to about 1 crore of rupees. I'm doing the smallest of projects. I'm doing a healthcare or kind of a OPD or a small hospital for a group of doctors. I may require up to something like 3, 4 crores. The fact remains that not many architects are business wise enough to kind of understand how to, take project finance and move into it and get into that fly contract. Regular contractors, they're able to leverage funding in a better way. So they know that if I have to put in about 50 lakhs now, then based on that, raise the bill by which client is going to be paying that 50 lakhs by that time. You need that buffer period of 50 lakhs by which that money comes. It could be a month or 2 months. I think a lot of architects, we're still on lofted grounds. We say that, we're consultants, fundamentally consulting. And that is what we intend to do. Do not really want to get into the construction and the contracting, that part, but we want to dictate the term to the contract. So I think we're still at that lofted place, apart from the fact that, yes, as architects, we kind of suck at finance a little. I don't think we kind of crack that actual business of it. I don't think a lot of architects are, inappropriately so, but mania enough to kind of really become that aspect of taking that thing done. A lot of my friends are doing it at the interiors level. I know that they're taking that up, but not at the larger level.
Okay, so I do have a follow-up question on the turnkey or not to turnkey. I would like to know your suggestion as an experienced architect for the younger generation of entrepreneurs coming out there. Should they consider turnkey or should they not consider turnkey? And if yes, then in which cases should they consider turnkey?
I'm usually a mixed bag sort of a person, so I see the world in gray. It's
Okay.
very difficult for me to kind of say that, you should or you should not. I think that with so many architects and so many projects saying that is what you should do is kind of wrong. Or you're going to
Hmm.
kind of expect sort of an answer from anyone, whether it's senior or junior. But
Yeah.
since you asked me that question, I mean, in my position, I'd say that no, do your consultancy right for the first time and
Okay.
focus on that. Bring that up to a certain level by which you're reputed for the set of services and the design and everything you do. Understand everything that it has to do with construction. And once you're
Mm-hmm.
able to achieve that level and you have that access to funds, yes, and you're smart enough as a businessman, like I said, to kind of really understand that our consultancy fees and what we're kind of doing is a very small percentage of the total project.
Right.
It takes a while for an architect to understand that. So that,
Yeah.
project might be worth 300 crores and our fees are maybe say about 40 lakhs or 20 lakhs or something.
Mm.
With that it is, we are actually a very small percentage of the total project.
Right. Right. Yeah.
I mean, all right, we do a lot of stuff and we do not get valued enough. I do understand that part.
Hmm.
But from the actual mathematics of it, we are a small percentage of the total. So no matter if you're able to handle that 20 lakhs or 30 lakhs worth of services well, and you're
Yeah.
consistently doing that over a number of years, to which hence you have been able to grow your business, by which you have access to corpus and business and finance, and you have that attitude and aptitude for taking up turnkey, then do it. Otherwise, no. So for, let's say, for the 90% of the population, no. Are you that 10%? Yes. So I'm just going to leave you. I'll just confuse you at that level and leave it.
All right. No, I think that's also a fair suggestion, I would say. Okay. So, moving on with more of industry questions, what is your take on the emergence of multidisciplinary practices in India?
Multidisciplinary has worked because there are too few, actually. I think we require more multidisciplinary practice. Because, like I said, historically, architecture has always been multidisciplinary. We work on
Mm.
collaboration. I think what multidisciplinary allows you is that kind of reassess yourself as
Mm.
a part in the wheel. I think there's this entire phase where I'm an architect and we just immediately have airs about ourselves. I feel that we are superior and we just look down upon an MEP engineer
Yes.
just doing a 50 pipe and stuff. That's not how the world is. And I think what multidisciplinary practices taught us is that, we have our role in the entire business system of design and consultancy.
Hmm.
We have a very important role, but we can only work on collaborate. Now, when you're able to integrate those collaboration and put it under one roof, and we're able to work much more seamlessly,
Hmm.
we work with better humility,
Hmm.
and very importantly, because it's seamless and it's within that larger system, we're able to provide services which are, let's say, 20-30% faster and
Hmm.
more economic, because we're not spending so much time on some external project management, just kind of coordinating.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have, our drawings are getting into the system. So the practices, I work in a very good multi
Hmm.
group, and, we have been building environmental plans, we have a BOQ and a tendering unit, plus we have architecture, BIM.
Hmm.
Not that all of them come together in every, we still offer a bouquet of services of what things need to come for that particular project. In the project that we're able to do, we're able to turn out better, more efficient design in about 30-40%.
Hmm.
Um, we're not cheaper that way. Our clients who are coming to us, taking that example, they realize that if they're getting better service in about 30% better time, or at least the coordination is already kind of done,
Hmm.
I see a lot of them preferring to work with us. I think that's a healthy way to move.
Hmm.
Not everyone's baby. I don't think everyone can handle a multidisciplinary
My.
practice. Requires a
Hmm.
very strong backbone of operations and IT systems and data sharing systems and this entire internal collaborative framework by which work. I think the ones that are able to do it, great. I think they are achieving new heights
Hmm.
that they're able to do. But I particularly feel that it's important to kind of think just beyond architecture and have one or two more services that you can develop and do it together. But multidisciplinary, having 6, 7, not everyone would have the acumen to really kind of develop that as an organization.
How are they competing with small practices and foreign practices?
I don't think multidisciplinary companies are really working with or competing with smaller practices. And I don't think smaller practices are competing with multidisciplinary. They're working in different domains. Multidisciplinary practices are working a lot in projects done by the government sector because they require that level of complexity to handle kind of like a 500 crore Supreme Court building, and you require
Hmm.
multidisciplinary practice.
Yes.
A smaller firm is able to give you a much more personal touch.
Hmm.
A smaller firm is able to give that time. So for a client who wants to invest that time with a practice who can offer you that time,
Hmm.
comfort in that kind of way. So I think when a smaller firm is understanding that we are a smaller firm and we're able to give you something which is not sped up, is evolved, discussions, they're able to have that, but they're able to do very well. While multidisciplinary practice are working well in the government sector and in the large scale real estate, organized real estate as well.
Hmm.
Real estate also has evolved by leaps and bounds. I have so many clients who are way more exposed than me.
Hmm.
They have seen the world, they have seen how things work, they are taking time out for a lot of kind of external. I have clients who are spending 1 or 2 years because they want to do a business management. They want to go to China and they want to spend 3 months and see how work since architect. Once we finished 5 years of architect and 2 years of post graduation, we're like, geez, we've
Yeah.
given
Too
7 years
much.
of my life. We're not really into continual learning. So talk
Hmm.
about things, but I don't think we're investing that. A lot of clients are much more exposed based on the kind of practices and architectural practices they have seen in, let's say, Singapore or in UK or US. They're
Hmm.
also expecting multidisciplinary practice. So that's working. With foreign companies,
Hmm.
I think that tussle is still there. And I think that tussle will be there as long as a lot of the architectural exposure that some of the foreign companies are kind of bringing in.
Hmm.
So we've had the opportunity to collaborate and work with some amount of foreign companies. By when I say foreign companies, I mean companies such as, let's say, DP Architects, with Sorbana, and all that kind of thing. I think a lot of the design value that they have brought to the design, I have to admit, that's true.
Yeah.
They
Okay.
have done, they have seen project cycles of projects across the world, whether it's from Oman to
Hmm.
Singapore to India itself. and let's say a particular company has done 6 to 7 IT buildings and not just done, and seen the project cycle, it's completed, they know how it operates, they're able to give a certain amount of actual experience and knowledge into the design system.
Hmm.
And I think in a globalized world, we need to be working with them, then
Okay.
them. We need
Yeah.
to compete with them. I understand that that respect needs to be reciprocity. So a lot of architects, so we are working in the Middle East as well, let's say. My example,
Hmm.
we are working in
Okay.
the Middle East. There have been companies and clients who have valued what we have been providing. So we're the
Hmm.
foreign architect. We
Yeah.
want to consult, right? We are providing some amount of industry expertise, experience, design quality. We
Hmm.
have been able to, and I think it's fair. I think that kind of nationalistic pride where, India only for Indian architects, I think it doesn't work anymore. That's not how business thrives
Grant. Yes.
everywhere.
Yeah.
If they are bringing something to the table, which is better, we need to acknowledge that. We need to work with that. We need to collaborate with them,
Hmm.
learn from them. Again, raise our expertise. Next time someone says, they say, you know what, you can work with them, but heck, what we're also giving you something really interesting.
Hmm.
Leave it up to
Okay.
them. And I think there are clients who are appreciating that as well.
Hmm.
I think that absolute romance with the foreign architect that was there about 10 years back, that absolute romance has kind of diminished now.
So it's more of the quality of service or the values that they are bringing on the table, because we see a lot of public infrastructure projects being handled or at least being conceptualized by foreign firms.
Yes, absolutely. I think where it becomes unfair is that when a tender is floated, when a government tender for a particular infrastructure, a large project is being floated, the unfairness happens if a politician or the body or the floating this thing, if they make a serious judgment that we only want to have foreign
Foreign
companies,
multinational.
they are not allowing an Indian company to compete with. When
Hmm.
that practice happens, I think that's wrong. I think,
Hmm.
but there are places where, we have seen examples where they have allowed both Indians to compete and foreign companies to compete.
Hmm.
Situation where it has been rigged in such a way, or kind of, when I say rigged, I mean written in such a way that makes it pretty evident that they want only a foreign company to compete. So, might say, okay, we want an annual turnover of 50 crores.
Hmm. Okay.
We know that there are not none, or probably just one or two companies in India which could probably provide
Have
that.
that kind of, yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So that's where it becomes really unfair. But
Hmm.
the fundamentality of it, I think in a globalized world, we need to be competing with them as much as they need to be competing with us. We need to take our businesses to Africa, to the Middle East,
Hmm.
to Southeast Asia. And believe me, there are markets there where they are appreciating us. We don't see ourselves as the foreign architect.
I would like to touch upon uh, a old word, star architect. Could this be a reason for young architects to believe in only design approach? Like that glamour that comes with being a staff architect. I mean, is it still relevant in this scenario, in this time?
So question, I'll
Okay.
break it up for you a little bit.
Hmm.
I think the architect is an architect who is good at their work. Second thing that they have been able to crack, which the others have not been able to crack, is to kind of, they've been able to make themselves and their practice into a brand. When I
Yeah.
say that I am my architect, and I'm wearing something black and posing like this and looking up, and I'm on a magazine cover, and I have a wonderful piece of architecture in the background. Like
Yeah.
done, they create a brand. They're signing themselves up. I know they're signing themselves up for award programs. No one is really nominating them. They're nominating,
Okay.
and they're winning. But I think, like any business, kind of see it, we see it at that way. I think it's okay. I think, or probably I still belong to that generation where I still do feel that design is a thing. I know that it's not the only thing. I did talk about other services, business aspects, and other things. But I think as architect, wherever our successes lie or where we want to grow is because design is at the crux. So
Mhm.
if a young architect still looks up to some star architect, whether Indian or international,
Mhm.
they have aspirations feel that, I want to design like that guy, or that star architect is, you know, telling me to have design centric or only a design only sort of thing. I, I don't think that's all too bad either. I think that
Okay.
the only thing that I expect out of that young person is if not be fanboyed into that thing completely,
Hmm.
you know, look at her with with adoration. You need to
Okay.
understand that, taking that example of the tea particle, she's gone through a struggle, she's putting a large amount of hard work and whatever thing. That star architect, whoever that
Hmm.
person is emulating, has also built up a business. He's focusing on construction techniques. He's working and collaborating with other consultants, and all of them have together built up kind of
Hmm.
product. I think this kind of orientation and understanding needs to come the academic level because that is where young minds are now.
Hmm.
So even in colleges, when we're talking about female architects, so whether it's Doshi, Korea, or maybe an international Pritzker Award or winning architect, whoever that it may be, I think it is the academician's role kind of in nurture those minds and say that, this is not just design. So many aspects to it and that we need to appreciate. If that orientation kind of happens, having that design centric adulation with a star architect, not necessarily you started off with a but thing.
So the answer, it partially answered my question. So I wanted to decouple the glamour from the star architect, and which is what I wanted to understand from you. I would like to now move towards education and your experience with the NYASA and everything. Students end up hand drafting for 3 years in college while the profession shuns it. So student colleges move to more of computer aided drafting. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely, 100%, 110% yes. I think
Okay.
idea of architect good in sketching,
Hmm.
that arcade. I think that's a wonderful skill to have. But, I mean, you should love cooking and dancing too. Then I mean, it just really adds to a lot of your personality. But I
Okay.
think if you no, but I think computer drafting also is kind of getting old now, don't you think? I think the idea of using anything that technology has to offer right now,
Yes. Yes.
we, I mean, educational institutes should be at the forefront of. What is
Hmm.
happening now is that I'm seeing a couple of firms which are at the forefront of it, and educational institutes which are like 30 years old.
Third year.
Uh,
Yeah.
Keep about it. But so, I mean, we should be embracing artificial intelligence. We should be embracing way much more than we're doing. I know that Autodesk pushed their agenda, shoving it down the throat, but it's not really kind of happening. So
Right.
I think CAD, 2D drafting, and
Hmm.
what I'm seeing is that, because of this, what's happening is that people get into architecture with powers of sketching, and ultimately, not everyone is good at sketching. So we see a lot of bad sketches.
Yes.
Then, as a like kind of third, fourth year, they're trying to get into CAD,
Hmm.
and no matter what they're doing, I don't really see them excelling at CAD either. So when they're coming
Okay.
into the profession, they're kind of semi-shitty in illustration and semi-shitty in CAD. And then we're spending about 6 months of our time to, senior guys, all these white beard and everything. We are telling them how to work in paper space and how to use Lisp to code up this thing and work on that. And I said, this is wrong. This is we should be learning from them. And I think the faculty and the university
Yeah.
that is promoting this thing, it is wrong. And I think even more when I think of it that, the world's largest tech company CEOs are handled by Indians.
Yeah.
Um, just weird that we are not embracing technological tools and systems, whether it's CAD systems or AI or the information modeling, Rhino, Grasshopper, all those kind of aspects come up, those
Hmm.
animals and insects. We're not really embracing that enough. I think we
Okay.
still have old school. I think that people who are like my age and it happened when I was young and it happens still now. They think that someone using AutoCAD or forget AutoCAD, any sort of CAD or systems, online systems maybe, think that अभी
Hmm.
तो सब कुछ आसान हो गया तो अभी सिर्फ कंट्रोल सी कंट्रोल भी कर लेते हो अभी तो सिर्फ गूगल से डाउनलोड कर लेते हो लेकिन I don't know a single faculty who are really taking effort that okay बेटा तुमको पर गूगल से ही डाउनलोड करना है ना
Huh.
how you actually download relevant stuff.
Right.
It is how
Yeah.
you use file type to download a PDF.
Yeah.
Okay, you're on Insta. Do you know that Insta has wonderful projects? And can we use, let's have a session on Insta and see how that we can really kind of get, and how can we make an effort to kind of really understand what correct information is and what, what illegitimate information that comes.
Hmm.
As parents, we are not teaching it to our children. As faculty, we're not teaching it to students,
Student.
and we're just kind of cursing the system.
Hmm.
Crazy. You guys should be absolutely, the young guys should be absolutely livid. I don't know why you're not, seeing a ruckus and you're out there on the street, crowds and saying that. You should be, young people should be, holding placards and, in front of a university and saying that, this your syllabus needs to change.
Right.
Uh, some syllabus have changed. I know of a few faculty and some good people who have encouraged it too little, too late.
Hmm. I still see students reading 60 plus year old books. So your generation read the same books, our generation read the same book, and students who are in college, they are also reading the same syllabus. Why?
No, so the books is different. So I mean, the books is different because no one, few people
Hmm.
are writing. There's a big lacuna of proper architectural research and writing.
Hmm.
I think why we use some of the classic books of that time is that there was someone who took the effort to kind of write those books, illustrate it, and do that. But how many publishing houses, how many architects? I mean, you've been in this field for years to understand. I know that you have friends. How many have been writing books and serious books that
Hmm.
come up?
Hmm.
I think what has happened comes back to something that I said probably about half an hour back. Architects think they just have to be working at a design company, turning out architects. As an architect, can be a politician and make changes,
Yeah.
be a lawyer and make changes,
Hmm.
can be a writer and make changes. If language and communication is a skill that you have,
Hmm.
and curiosity is something that you have, what is stopping you from publication has become so much easier now than it was years back. Stopping you from actually writing a book. It could be online, it could be offline. I know for a fact that the Council of Architecture is encouraging those things. I know that every time something has happened, architecture colleges have also taken up these. Not that
Hmm.
they're not encouraging these things. People are not writing. That's bad.
So we have been talking about the NEP for some time now. What impact do you think the new education policy will have on Indian architecture education and practice?
I think it's going to be a big change, and
Okay.
I'm really looking forward to it. I think what is fundamentally happening is that holistic learning of architecture is going to
Hmm.
change now. I think there's going to be a huge amount of change that is coming with the national education policy.
Hmm.
And what it's, I really haven't gone through in detail where it is going to be affecting architecture. I really feel that you need to be speaking to some of the academic heads um, who are now on the cusp of
Hmm.
it, and we are kind of talking with the university and doing that. But I think
Hmm.
architecture will not be living in isolation anymore. I think that's
Right.
wonderful. And then
Yeah.
an architecture student who is interested in economics and artificial intelligence can also take that up as minor subjects or major subjects along with the major of art. So
Hmm.
I think that's going to change our perspective of things. So you can take up physical fitness along with economics and computer science and architecture as well.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
I think uh, that idea of architecture as an expertise is going to change. I think our world is making a lot of people into jack of all trades.
Hmm.
And I think that's how the world is moving. People who are just focused on one thing and doing it well
Hmm.
are becoming more and more redundant. Need.
Right.
We require people who have a more holistic approach towards things, like I said, who understand the
Hmm.
business and economics along with design or something like that. And I think all that is going to be turning up a new set of architects. I do feel that it's going to be very difficult for the colleges to kind of follow through with that part because how do you really get faculty coming into the threshold of change that the national education policy is it's bring
Hmm.
along with the colleges? I think this is a golden opportunity. I think we need to have more discussions. I think you and other web portals and other things need to
Hmm.
be engaging with the universities, with the academic council that set syllabus and saying that, okay, we're at the threshold of this change.
Right.
And you also listen to the young people of what they want to say, what they are expecting out of it.
Hmm.
This is that opportunity where we say that we can make the syllabus, better, where we can make the education system.
Hmm.
So, but I think it's going to take some time. I think what we will see is we will see the fruits of that in about 10, 12 years. From what I understand, at least in Maharashtra, what I'm hearing from the heads of colleges, this is being changed really as we speak. 2024, 25, we're going to be seeing quite a bit. But like I said, the fruits of it, because this has to be a system change, right? The
Hmm.
system change from the type of faculty that are coming in, from the expectations that are coming out, mindset change that has to happen. The industry and practical life will evolve as it is. You don't need
Hmm.
policies to real life.
Hmm.
Policies system. Um, so probably around the 2030 things are really going to be interesting of what comes up, and this needs to track continually.
Hmm.
Every year we
Okay.
need to see how this policy is changing, how colleges is changing, how is the output of students changing,
Hmm.
how our practice is also
Okay.
the process of assessment.
Hmm. Okay. So the next question is actually quite opposite of that. So I would like to understand from you, what is your take on the discussions about architecture being a dying profession?
Yeah, architecture is an evolving. I don't think architecture is dying. I think it's evolving. It's just that we're not evolving. A lot of people are not evolving fast enough. We're like you said, we're reading 50-old book. We're still working on a system which is illustration based rather than technology based.
Hmm.
We are not really understanding the business dynamics of how architecture as a profession is supposed to move. People
Mhm.
who are able to kind of adapt to that, are inquisitive enough to kind of do that, I think they will continue to evolve with architecture. I do not see architecture as dying in a developing country in India, not dying in evolved countries like Sweden or US or things like that. I do not understand why you're saying that this is a dying.
Yes, so
It's not what it was.
that must keep on changing. But my idea is about many young architects are leaving the industry. The salaries are quite low. What is your take on that? And which is why I said that there is a lot of discussion going on if the architecture is dying.
I understand that people are, and I know that for a fact, a lot of young people are disenchanted with the idea of architecture as a profession. So they're not getting into
Hmm.
architecture. There are Pune where I stay, there are some the colleges of architecture, and probably only about 3 or 4 are probably getting a full admission. A lot of them are getting very piecemeal admissions, and some of majority have not gotten any admissions at all.
Hmm.
So I do understand where it comes from that it's not um, appealing to a lot of the younger generation to kind of come in. When we do not have young people coming into a profession, then I do understand that it is the death knell for the profession itself. Because we require young people coming in. So from
Hmm.
that part, I do understand that where your concern lies. Is this the beginning of the end?
Yeah.
It's a very complex set of this thing because how do we raise value of a profession enough that raise value by which clients, whether they're an individual client or a government client or a real estate client, will pay us more,
Hmm.
by which we're able to pay our employees and our colleagues more. It all comes from value. And I think that that value needs to happen from both within the system and an institutional school.
Hmm.
So, like I said, architects need to kind of move them. One part is that architects need to understand that they're not just providing design services. They are businessmen. They are technical partners to a project. They need to understand what the client's interests are, how the government's interests are, policies, acts, finance, and all these kind of inspect. And so they become a technical and design partner to the client.
Hmm.
When they're able to kind of do that and make that jump from just being an architect, I think that they will be valued more. When that value becomes more and our confidence grows, we are able to raise the bar in terms of the fees that we see.
Hmm.
So let's say it was X, now we're able to probably get, let's say maybe you want a percentage of profit.
Hmm.
How many architects say that, I want a percentage of premium? But let's say some architect says that, we're giving this, our investment in this, that we're providing. invested in the project as much as you. We want
Yeah.
percentage of taking 1% of the revenue. That can be more than whatever, or 2% of the revenue that is can be more than what we're doing now. And I think naturally there will be a system that, we are in a better position. Surveys with more money. Companies will be in a better position. Yeah. So this is something that had to happen at the for the institutional level. So what Council of Architects, what IIA or any such bodies like ISOLA, like IUDI, what they have to do is that they have to have a concerted effort to engage with public and government and clients to say that, what, we are involved in so many things, we're doing so many things. We need to celebrate that and the projects and the design that we're doing so that people say that, wow, these guys are doing work and they're worth their value. So I think when both of these things are happening at that kind of level, we should be able to kind of come to a system where things will look. I understand the young architect dilemma, or let's say young aspirational architect dilemma. They don't, they see their colleagues and friends earning more and doing more, and neither is it glamorous anymore, and neither is it lucrative anymore. And I think a lot of people, I think they're also kind of worried that, why do I want to put 5 years of my life on? But I think the national education policy is also going to change that, because it's going to give you an option to have that 3+2 or 4+1
Yes.
model.
So what would be your suggestion to newcomers in the industry?
You asked me that when I'm 70 or something like, kind of already had made a few suggestions here and there.
Okay. All right. So we understand that many architecture graduates are unemployable these days, right? What suggestions would you give to them so that they land up in a good position when they graduate?
Like you said, like you kind of touched upon, understand architecture as a whole, understand that as part of the entire kind of construction business, understand it from the client's perspective of what is kind of really necessary for them, other than what is just kind of taught in academia, right? Buying things that we are able to literally change life as we know it. No, we are part of a system. Policymakers have to do their work, politicians have to do the work, have to do the work, architects have to. Once you're able to appreciate all that part, we understand where our role lies and how we can evolve that role with our clients. Be innovative there, innovate their own role as an architect. These are the people who are going to succeed more and more, not just the individual design-centric architect. I know that they will have their place in, but the ones who will probably be growing forward, who are working on collaborations, who are working with clients, with finance houses, becoming a different level of architectural partner, the entire development.
Okay. So that was actually a very wonderful suggestion for young people out there. This entire session actually has been a quite learning one. So thank you so much for joining us. I had only that many questions for you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.